What is it that makes a great support player in Overwatch? Generally speaking, when I see people ask this question on the forums, they usually link their profile and ask, hey, check out my stats and see if I'm actually performing at the level that I should be. Now, I know that healing done and assists are really important in the game, but I don't think it really comes down to this. I think there are a lot of other factors that should be taken into consideration when trying to distinguish yourself from a good and a great support player. I don't really think there's a number sheet that we could really grab and say, hey, this is what you have to perform at to actually be a great support player, but I think it really comes down to the player's overall experience, positioning, ultimate usage, and amongst other things that truly set them apart from the rest of the support players. Hey, what's up guys, it's Joker, and today I'm going to be talking about what it is that I think distinguishes good support players from the great ones in Overwatch. Now, the golden rule that every support should live by is to simply stay alive. It's the most important thing that you can do in practice when you're trying to be a great support player, because you're there to provide the longevity that your team needs in order to win the big engagements. Just like every other class in the game, you're useless to your team if you're dead, and when the supports are usually the first to get picked off, the rest of the team will follow suit shortly thereafter that. Now, this is a two-way street though, because sometimes you're only as good as your team allows you to be, and supports do need support from a good team as well in order to be successful. Because when you call out that there's a Genji, Tracer, or Reaper on you, your team should peel off enough damage to come scare them off and get them off your back. Now, this goes hand in hand with positioning and how you position yourself well within your teammates, so that way it helps them deal with flankers and dive compositions more efficiently. The next thing that great support players do is learn how to position themselves within their team composition. Positioning is something that's really learned over time, and figuring out where each spot is in every map or which works with each team composition is really important. Each hero has a different position within the team comp, and generally learning how to stay out of line of sight is a great rule of thumb to live by. Positioning yourself in hard to reach spots really counteracts dive compositions and flankers because it makes them hard for them to get to you in the first place. And when you have to rely on your teammates to pull you out of a sticky situation, it's best to know where your tanks are at all times, because odds are that's where the most damage is coming from. When you call out that you have a flanker as you're flying to your tank, it gives them ample time for them to turn around and try to deal with them for you. And when you're trying to get back to your tanks, it's best to know what your escape mechanics are. The two support heroes with the best escape mechanics are Mercy and Lucio, with Lucio being able to utilize his speed boost to get back to his team quickly, and Mercy is able to Guardian Angel to a nearby teammate or her tank within a 30-meter radius. However, for heroes like Zenyatta and Ana, they don't have the best escape mechanics to utilize when they're trying to get away from a flanker. For Zenyatta, it comes down to sheer damage output when they put their Discord on a flanker and trying to deal with them themselves, and Ana has her sleep dart, but if she misses the sleep dart, odds are she's probably going to die in that engagement. Like I said, support shouldn't be out in the open or by themselves. They should always be with their team and always positioning themselves properly. But when you have to get yourself out of a sticky situation, utilizing your escape mechanics to the best of your ability and learning how to fully use the hero's kit is what's going to elevate you to be a great support player. The next thing that's really important, and honestly goes for every character in the game, is ultimate usage. And the most important thing when you're using your support ultimate is don't panic ult. There's two ultimates that are aimed at mitigating damage, and that's the sound barrier and transcendence. And the most irritating thing is watching a Lucio that pops the sound barrier after the teamfight's already lost, or watching a Zenyatta ult just to save his own life. Those two ultimates themselves take a long time to get, and when you blow them just on a few people or just yourself, it's something that's really going to be a detriment to the team as a whole. For Mercy's Resurrect, it's generally not a good idea to resurrect one person unless it's really going to sway the tide of the team fight. Generally speaking, you're going to want to get the most value out of the Resurrect as possible, so ultimately undoing a complete team wipe is the best way to get the most value out of it. And sometimes your teammates just don't die, which makes the res ineffective. In these events, it's best not to roll with Mercy because you're giving up damage that you could be dealing with another support character. Odds are if you already have a Lucio on your team, you're probably just better off switching to Ana or Zenyatta because they're going to be able to deal a lot more damage and give more utility to your team that doesn't die, other than giving a resurrect to them that's only going to be used once in a great while. The next thing a great support does is know when the ultimate fight is going to start happening. Usually it's a second or third engagement that your team has in a game that they usually start bringing their ultimates out, but knowing when these are going to start happening is great for a support player because they know how to position themselves out of the way of crowd control ults like Graviton Surge and Earthshatter, so that way they can provide their support ultimates to save their team. Like if you're Mercy and you know that the ults are going to start coming, it's best to remove yourself and get yourself out of line of sight so that way you can get a good resurrect off on your team. For Zenyatta and Lucio, it's easy because they can put themselves in the middle of these ultimates and actually provide their support ultimates to save their team. Now, the last point that I can make is to work with your other support character on your team. When you work with them, it's best to coordinate your ultimates, because what I usually do if I'm Zenyatta or Lucio is I tell my other support, hey, I'm going to be using my Transcendence on the Graviton Surge so you can save yours for the Earthshatter, and vice versa. When you work with which ultimates are going to be used, it's best because instead of blowing both ultimates on a team fight, you're able to provide them for two separate fights, and it's going to help your team stay alive longer during those big engagements. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Let me know down in the comments below if I happen to miss anything or what you think makes a great support in Overwatch. And just so you guys know, I'm going to start releasing videos every Saturday from now on at around noontime. And if you have any suggestions or questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments below. Until next time, take care guys.